Okay, so I want to focus first of all on working with audio. So I want to get clear on a few terms first. So I'm just going to read through this and then comment on it a little bit as we go. So frequency, I'm sure you've heard of these terms, but you may not be familiar with exactly what they mean. Frequency, when sound is created, it travels through a medium, usually air. Changes in the pressure form waves. And when those waves reach our eardrums, we interpret them as sound. The timing of those waves is what's known as frequency, or to take the word literally, how frequently the wave fluctuates. The way we measure these waves is hertz, or cycles per second. The more cycles per second, the higher the pitch of the sound. We usually measure in kilohertz or anything over 1,000 hertz. Now, amplitude, amplitude is basically how loud it is. Frequency is how high or low the pitch is. So an important part of measuring sound is amplitude, or how much the sound wave fluctuates up and down. Files with smaller fluctuations will be softer and bigger fluctuations will be louder. The way we measure amplitude is in decibels, or dB for short. And you will see that in After Effects. You can see that we can modify the decibels to raise or lower the audio. And that's written with a small d and an uppercase B. All amplitude is expressed as a negative number because you can't or shouldn't go above 0. Anything above 0 will be distorted. So usually we work at about -3. That's sort of typical. When we capture audio digitally, we're not actually recording every single moment of the sound. Instead, we capture snapshots at set intervals, and these are called sample rate. The sample rate is measured in hertz, and we have some standard rates, like for CDs, if anybody still listens to CDs, it's 44,100 hertz, or 44.1 kilohertz. Video, which is usually at 48,000 hertz, or 48 kilohertz, the sample rate is especially important for higher frequencies because they have more cycles per second, and you need to make sure the speed at which you're sampling these sounds can actually capture those cycles. The general rule is that your sample rate should be about double the highest frequency you're trying to record, which is why 44.1 kilohertz is as low as you'd really want to go, since human hearing can reach about 20 kilohertz. If I create a new file by going up, this is for Audition. If I create a new file by going up to File, New Audio File, you can see there's a drop-down list for sample rate. Some audio engineers will set their sample rate as high as 96 kilohertz for incredible high quality. Of course, the trade-off is the higher your sample rate, the larger your files will be. So bit depth, and you've probably heard of bit depth in Photoshop and also in video and other things. Bit depth determines the amount of information stored in every sample of an audio file. The more bits, the wider the range of amplitude we can have in that sample. When creating a new file, click on New Audio File, and down at the bottom are the bit depth. A low depth of 8 bits has a dynamic range of 48 decibels, which doesn't allow for much change in amplitude. The two most common bits that you'll come across are 16-bit, which you'll more commonly find in CDs and has a dynamic range of 96 decibels, or 24-bit, which has a range of 144 decibels. The highest option you have is 32. This may have changed already. It's going to end up going to 64. 32 will allow for most dynamic range in your recordings, 192 decibels. As with the sample rate, the higher your bit depth, the larger your files will be. My recommendation would be to choose the highest your computer can handle, which most likely will be 32-bit. Even if you're delivering at a lower bit depth, you can always down convert to a lower bit depth later for delivery and keep a higher quality version as your master. All right, so now I want to open up Audition. Hopefully you guys have downloaded Audition. And this is what Audition looks like. The Audition interface, once we get some things in here, you're going to see there's lots of bells and whistles and dials and things. And it's actually looks a lot more complicated than it is. You can, of course, do some very complicated mixing and so forth with Audition. What we're going to be doing is very simple and very easy to do. When you get your files downloaded, I'd like you to open Audition, and I want you to take 2 audio files, To Ya Know and French Toast mixed down. While you're getting ready, I want to mention a few things here. So To Ya Know, that has a sample rate of 44,100 hertz, and French Toast has 48,000 hertz. So this is important because what we're going to do is create a new session, and we need to match this sample rate. All right, so I've brought these over, but just by dragging them over into this panel, this is where we keep all of our clips. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to come up here and make a new multi-track session. So this one is going to be for the To Ya Know. So I will type in here the name of the session. To Ya Know, and then I will put it on my desktop. And I'll save it there. And then here is here's the bit rate. The sample rate. So it's 44.1, so that's right. Here's my bit depth, which is 32. So that's what I'm going to stick with. And stereo. Now we don't need stereo, but I'll leave it there for now. So then I'm going to say okay. And then I'll take my AIF file. So AIF is the file, the uncompressed file that you would use for Macs. For Windows, you'd use a WAV file. And we'll talk about this in a moment. But I'm just going to take this one and drag it in here into my multi-track. Now, let me talk a little bit about what Audition is. Audition has 2 applications that have been combined into a single application. So it's rather unique as far as an audio editing program, because in the past, multi-track and waveform were 2 different interfaces. Well, we still have 2 different interfaces, but they're combined into a single program. But they do different things. The multi-track is where you're going to do your mixing, and then the waveform allows you to apply certain effects and do certain things. Some things have to be done in the waveform. Waveform is destructive in that once you save it, it's going to be permanently changed. So you want to be sure that you do a save as so that you don't damage your original track. But this is awesome here because all of you, I think, are going to be dealing with music that needs to be shortened. And in this, it's really great. So what you can do down here is, if it's not already set up, click on Properties over in this window on the left. And here, Enable Remix. Just click that. Takes a minute to analyze it. Okay, then see target duration. So this is 1:03 seconds. Let's say I want it to be 45 seconds. That's all I can do. So I'm going to click on here and I can just type in 45, hit return. And now it has edited for me automatically. Now you can, up here at the top, if you want to see the whole length of your clip, your track, you can just click on this button and that'll show you the whole length of the clip. And right here, you look for this wiggly line. This wiggly line, that shows you where the AI in the application made the edit. And so you may want to click just before it and play through it, and see if you can hear any sound. I don't hear, hear any, if you can hear the edit, if there's any distortion or any problem. It seems pretty flawless. I'm going to go back to the way it was and go into that same area and see if we hear any difference. See, it's because there's repetition in there, so it can identify the repetition and then just cut it out. So we don't repeat it as often. Also in here, you can do your fades. This little square right here at the beginning, if you drag that, and you can drag down, That's going to create a fade in. And then over here, we can click and drag. There's already a built, I mean, it looks like there's already a fade out on this, but this would do a fade out. So let's hear what it sounds like. So that'll be a nice way to lead in. You can also do this in After Effects, but it it works out really well here also. If you double click on this, now we're in the waveform. So we've jumped from multi-track to waveform. Waveform is where we will modify the amplitude or the volume. And when I play this, I want you to look down here at the bottom. Okay, so down here at the bottom, here is 0. We don't want it to go beyond 0. I'll show you what that looks like. Right up here, this is called a heads-up display, a HUD right here. And if I move this thing around, I'm increasing the amplitude or the volume. And see, watch what happens down here when I play it. So I'm past 0, which is very bad, because that means anything past 0 is going to be a distortion. I'll just do this. I'm going to do a Command Z, get it back to where I was. Now, we have some presets for the volume up under favorites, normalize. And so normalize means you bring the volume within the normal range, the acceptable range. And so you can normalize to minus 0.1 or minus 3. So I'll go to minus 3 and it calculates, and you can see how it's dropped it down so that the very highest, these are the highest, the loudest parts, that is going to be contained so that it can't be higher than 3. So if I play it now, see, it just stays right at minus 3. So that's kind of ideal. Here we can also put in our fades, and this one I like because it shows you the fade. On the multi-track, you don't see the fade. It gives you the readout as you drag it, but you don't see it like you do here. Click here so I can see the whole thing, and then I'll fade it out on this side, something like that. And then I would want to export this. If this is all set up the way I want it to, I mean, I can go back now to multi-track, and now it is showing my fades, and it has my edit in there. And now I can export. Let's see, when I export multi-track mix down, entire session. Now in here, obviously it's where this is important here, because here's the formats. So you want to know where you're going to be using it. So if you've got a Mac, you're working on a Mac, you want to do the AIFF. If you're on a PC, you want to do WAV. You generally do not want to use MP3 or MP4, which is probably what you have downloaded from YouTube for your music. Generally, it's not recommended that you use MP3 or MP4 in After Effects because you can have issues when you go to rendering. Your output can be glitchy. Personally, I actually have not had I haven't noticed any problems, but the recommendation is Macs, AIFF, PCs, WAV. So you just come in here, and then it's going to go to my desktop, I want it to go into my auditions, my session. Where is it? It is. And then you can look at all the other stuff and see, as long as it's all consistent and what you want, and then you'd say okay and render it out. Let's do another one, just because it has a different sample rate. So I'm going to do new multi-track session. This will be for French Toast. And I'll put it in the same place. Now this one, French Toast, is 48,000. So it's 48 kilohertz. So I'll come in here and go to 48,000. I'll leave it at the 32, stereo okay. say okay. And then I can drag French toast into here. Now French toast is longer. So let's listen to it for a minute. So this one has a lot of repetition in it. We don't need to go through the whole thing, but let's do the enable remix over here on the left. Okay, and so let's say, again, let's say that I need this to be at 45 seconds. And then I'm going to click here so I can see the full length. Here is where the edit is, right in here. And there's a lot of repetition in here. I played this earlier, so it's just taken out a lot of the repetition, but let's play through it right here and see. Sounds perfectly smooth. Yeah, so it works really well. Now you can, we've got all these tracks and you can have a lot more tracks. So you could bring in other music and do cross fades. You could have audio, voiceover. So this whole thing can do a lot of mixing, and all these buttons and everything. It looks really complicated. It's not that complicated, but we're not going to take it that far. I just wanted you to see how easy it is to shorten your music. That's the main thing. And make sure you get all this information correct when you set up your multi-tracks. Any questions about this? Did you guys follow that okay? Cool. All right, so now let's quit this. I think I'll go ahead and output this one. Maybe I'll put a little bit of a fade in here. Oh, let's go in here. It's already quite low in volume, so it doesn't matter, but let me see if fading it in, how it sounds. Okay, yeah, I'll go with that. And then I'll go back to my multi-track. What's this? This clip may have shifted out of sync due to a source media change. I think it's okay. So export, multi-track, entire session, audio sessions, AIFF, 4000. Export. I just want to double check that those exports worked. Yep. Looks like I've got them both. Okay, so now I'm going to quit Audition. Although you can import MP3 and MP4, it's not recommended because they often cause problems during rendering. These types of files have been compressed and don't provide AE, After Effects, with all of the information needed for correct output. For best results, convert your file to AIFF or WAV. So previewing an audio clip in a composition. Okay, let's open up and we'll take a look at this in After Effects itself. So I'm going to bring my audio in. I'll bring both of these in. There we go. And I'll just bring this down in here. Okay, so when you place an audio clip in a composition, type LL, that will show you your waveform. Now there's several ways to preview the sound. I have to warn you, I mean, you've probably already experienced this, that audio in After Effects is kind of a pain. After Effects doesn't handle audio very well, and previewing audio can be challenging sometimes, particularly if you have a complicated animation. It'll get bogged down. So sometimes you just want to listen to your audio. So If you want to just listen to your audio, you need to have your preview panel open here. Can you see can you see this? Can you see my After Effects? Anybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So in the preview panel over here, you can hide the animation right here. And this way, then you can only hear your audio. And then the animation won't play, it won't render, and so you don't have a problem with it. And so to preview the animation, you can press your space bar. Also, there's different ways. You can also do, like up in here, let's look at the preview thing for a minute. You can choose the whole work area. So if I wanted to just preview a section of it, I could shorten my work area. So you can hit B for begin and N for end, and it will preview just this area and then loop it. You could do work area extended by current time. So that means it will play from the beginning through your work area and then loop back to the beginning. So it's including this area in the preview. You can also play around current time. So this is sort of interesting. So this is pre-roll 2 seconds, post-roll 2 seconds. So it's going to go 2 seconds before and 2 seconds after. So watch what happens. So it just keeps going around, 2 before and 2 after. So, you know, this makes it a bit easier to deal with your audio. Also, scrubbing through, you can scrub through the audio. This is going to be something that's really important to you, is you're going to need to hold down the command key, and then you can scrub through. It's really pretty lame, but you can do that. And sometimes it helps with your waveform to really zoom in on it so you can see the beats, because these are going to be the loudest points, and that's where you're going to want to probably put keyframes. Okay. Then you do, if you have an animation there, of course you want to make sure you go back and turn this eyeball on so that you can see your animation. Oh, so also I wanted to tell you about the audio panel. So here's the audio. So this is similar to what we just saw in Audition. I have a little chart on the handout that tells you what all these things are. Basically, you know, this is our output. So this is our levels. Again, 0 is as high as we want to go. If this gets red here at the top, then we need to adjust our audio. We adjust it over here. So let me make sure this is selected. And this is for your left speaker and your right, because we've got stereo here. So it's got a right and a left. This will adjust them both, or you could adjust them individually. Okay, then setting markers. A lot of times it's really important to set markers when you're animating, because you want to find those beats and you want to hit the beat. So the asterisk on the extended keyboard places it. Usually when I'm playing it and then I try to hit, I have to go back and adjust it. That's where the scrub through helps, because I usually am a little bit slow on hitting those. But there are some others. I'm just right clicking and I'm going to delete all these markers. Put markers on the music layer itself or on the layer that makes sense. Double click the markers to open the composition marker panel, where you can make comments. Medium mark, you may need to move the markers to the left or right, as there's a slight delay in the time you hit the asterisk and the time the application sets the marker. Also, your reflexes may be slightly off. So if necessary, move the markers left or right and preview the audio again. Use the single frame preview, hold down the command key and drag to fine tune the position of markers. Look at the waveform, also helps you. Okay, so, but the point is we have composition markers and then we have layer markers. And composition markers is shift and asterisk or shift 8. With music, I think it makes more sense to put the markers on the music layer, because if you slide this around at all or make changes to this is where you want the markers, not on the composition. So because this you have to where you have to sync your animation to. That's what I would recommend, is you put that on the music layer itself. Now let's have some fun here with, I want to convert this to keyframes. Up under animation, I've got this selected and I can go to animation, keyframe assist, convert audio to keyframes. And what it did is it created a null object that has keyframe, 1,000,000 keyframes for all of the beats. Now, how is this useful? Well, let me show you. Let's say I'm going to put an object in here. Like I'll just put this star. What I want to do is make it respond to the music. So what I'm going to do is use scale. So I'll hit S, and then I'm opening up my amplitude, my audio amplitude. I'm going to get rid of the stereo channels. I don't need them. So I'm going to get rid of the left channel, the right channel. I'm just going to keep both channels. So the slider here I want to have available, because I'm going to put an expression in by option clicking on scale. And then I'm going to drag this pick whip down to this slider. Now I can make this bigger by adding a null object. And I can actually take this to the null and make the star bigger. I'm going to reduce this a little bit. Reduce my resolution. Hopefully it'll play better. I'll start over now that it's rendered. Okay, so the puppet tool, this is the puppet tool up here. So we put all these pins in. We have, now there are 5 different varieties. The puppet position pin tool, the starch pin tool, the bend, the advance, and the overlap. So let's take a look at the octopus. What happened with this? We need to put some pins in to hold things in place. So let me show you. I'll put one here at the top. As soon as you put them in, establish one pin, then you start seeing the mesh. And I'm going to put one like here, maybe here and here. And then maybe, I'll show you what happens. You see how you can move these things? Like I can take this one and move this out and move this one around. So as soon as you put them in place, they automatically create a keyframe for you. I've got this, I broke this octopus up into 3 parts. So this one is separate, and the back is separate, and this front part. So the way it works is then you'd move in time, and then you can move the pins around, and then you get some motion. So like this one could come up here, and maybe I'll take this one and move him around here. I put another one in here. I have to go back to the beginning. I want that to be at the beginning. This one, and come back here. Now let's talk about the different types of pin. So the starch pin is basically to keep certain areas from moving very much. Like some places you want it to move just a little bit in order for it to feel alive. You don't want it to stay perfectly solid. You want it to move a little bit. That's where you'd use the starch. The bend just lets you bend things around. Now, any one of these can be switched to another type. So in the timeline here, under mesh, deform, there's all your pins there's all the pins I put in. Here's this pin right now. And if I open this up, right now it's a position pin. I could change it to a bend, for example. And the bend pin lets me rotate it around like this, for example. So the bend is fairly limited. It lets you rotate things around, which is kind of cool, but the advance does a lot more. So with the advance, you can actually move it and rotate it and scale it. So you could like scale this in and out if I can grab it. There we go. So this can scale in and out, and we can move it all around, so forth. Let me put one in the back here. This one. So if I go to this one, let me put some pins in. I'll put a pin to kind of hold it in place. We put one there, and then stick one over here. This one I think I'll change into the advanced. So then I could like move this. Well, I'll leave it here. I want that to be at the beginning actually. So let me reveal my keyframes, grab all these, start them over here, and then in this position I can move this over. It'll move like that. I want to get this over there to scratch his head. There, now it's moving. So this could come over here, and then we could scratch his head. Like this. So you can make these 2D objects do all kinds of things, and it can be a lot of fun to play around with. I've got this man walking here. So this guy, this has a lot of keyframes. He's walking over, and then he slips and falls. Boom. So you can create the walk here, for example, and then you can take him into another composition and then move him across the page. This one's more challenging because every one of the points gets moved. So these were all done with just the position and then the overlap and the start. Let's talk about the overlap for a minute. If I zoom in here, let's see, stop that. Because it's a 2D object, it doesn't know right away what goes in front and what doesn't. And so sometimes you can get the wrong thing going in front and in back. So you have this tool, this overlap, and with the overlap in his initial state, this is the overlap, and this is establishing that this leg and foot is going to overlap the other one. And same deal here. This stuff is overlapping this hand when this hand goes behind. This hand, come back. So I could create an overlap here, but this one has his hand started out up here. So this is where the overlap is. So you could you click on the intersections of these of the mesh, and now that establishes this as the portion that's going to go over the other elements. Let me drag the guy in to a new one, and let's play around with that. So I'll just say here. And let me I'll just throw in a background with a gradient on it real quick. Generate gradient ramp. Okay, I'll just do something like that, and then I'll bring my man in. Scaling down. So I'll take my pins, position pins. We need to hold, his head's gonna have to hold still. Oops, I didn't want to do the whole thing. Background. So keep his head in place. Maybe one there. then at each of the joints, so like here, probably want one there to hold that in place. Here, 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 here. And I'm not going to move him across. I'm just going to try to create the motion right here in place. And let's see if that one, I'm probably going to have to zoom in on this one and make that the overlap, like I was saying. So this would be the overlap pin tool. Click on the polygons here to define this area as overlap. Okay, so that'll be overlap. And this hand will be overlap. Obviously, it can be a little, time consuming to get it right. I want this to be overlap, this jacket bottom here. That's probably good enough. And then we can set up the motion. So, when this leg goes back, this hand comes forward. So I'm going to start here, and then I'll just move out like 15 frames and bring this leg back, and this leg forward, and then this hand, when this leg comes, this one comes forward, this one comes forward, that one goes back. So like over here, actually, I guess that's okay. I'm going to come out here. This one, I'll pull this one down a little bit. This one I could switch maybe to the advanced. So I'll go in here to the form, go in here, grab the advanced. So now this one can rotate a little bit more, exaggerated. Going in like that. We got him already walking a little bit. And when we'd want his head to move a little bit too. So, maybe this one comes forward a little bit. And then as it goes back, this one. And this one will come forward, this one will go back, this one will come forward, cross over here. This one, I guess I'll just stay there. So let me go like this, boom, boom. And so you can just set up the whole thing, where it's moving around. And then you could, I would just, in this case, you could just do position keyframes to move him across. So you start like over here, over here. Oops. Over here. Down here. Bring across. Then he's walking across like that. So it's kind of fun, and a lot of you are using graphic element and that are going to need to be animated probably in some way. So this can give a little bit of life to two-dimensional illustrations. So it can be kind of fun.
Professor?
Yeah.
So for example, we make like the man in Illustrator. Do we have to export it like as like the arms and the legs?
It depends on what you're doing. I was playing around with this octopus today, and I found that I needed to break her up because originally it was all one illustration in Photoshop. And so I wanted to divide it up because otherwise everything was getting distorted. Like if I tried to move this arm, it would move all of these arms. And in order for me to get the overlap and make it feel more lifelike, I had to cut it all up. So I've got, I'll show you the different parts here. I think it's obvious, but like that part, and this one. So it depends on how, like, because this was already drawn overlapping, that it needed to be done. The man is not overlapping anything. So, I mean, nothing's overlapping. So it isn't really necessary to separate him all out. So, it just depends on your illustration and how involved you want to get with it. But this one's just flat, it's not separated out.